At midday on the 11th of September 2018, a pedestrian who was using a footpath on a level crossing in Edinburgh was struck and fatally injured by a tram travelling at 33 miles per hour. Examining the final moments using the front-facing CCTV camera, we investigate the incident in full and try to find out why the pedestrian did not look up once and was seemingly completely unaware of the approaching tram. The crossing in question, located between Ball Green tram stop to the east and Salton tram stop to the west, is the most westerly of the three crossings in this section of line, which comprises of 2 tracks in both directions. With a maximum permitted speed on both tracks limited to 44 miles per hour, the exact crossing as shown is known as an off-street crossing, and unlike on-street crossings, there are no flashing lights to signal it's safe to cross. It is totally reliant on pedestrians to read the signs, stop at the entrance, look both ways and decide if it is safe to cross. On the morning of the accident, the pedestrian, who had recently passed out as a bus driver for Lothian buses, parked his car on Salton Main Street, and at 09:45 am he actually walked over the crossing on his way to start his first bus drive from Stenhouse Drive. At 12:07 hours, he returned his bus. This was 5 minutes later than planned due to a fault on the bus's ramp. After speaking to the next relief driver for 1 minute, he crossed over Stenhouse Drive along the footpath that led to the crossing. His next rostered duty was at 13:18 pm from a location 5 minutes away. At 12:08, tram number 260, one of 26 manufactured by CAF and operated by Edinburgh Trams, departed Ball Green tram stop heading west towards the airport. The driver, who was now approaching Carricknell Bridge, a sharp turn as shown that goes over the main line railway, slowed down to 25 miles an hour. After passing, the track begins to straighten and the max speed raises to 44 miles per hour. At 73 metres away from the crossing, the front-facing CCTV camera from the tram's cab shows an arrow on the location of the pedestrian. At this point, he is roughly 6 metres from the crossing and has only now become visible to the driver due to bushes and 2 trees in the way which are circled. The tram's on-train monitoring recorder showed that the driver applied slight pressure on his service brake in anticipation of the pedestrian. At 53 metres away, the driver frantically sounded his warning bell and did this for 1.5 seconds up to 23 metres away. However, the pedestrian did not look up and seemed totally unaware that the tram was approaching. This final CCTV image shows the tram just 18 metres away. With still no reaction from the pedestrian, the driver slammed his emergency brakes while still travelling at 38 miles per hour. With the e-brakes engaged, the tram automatically sounded its warning bell continuously, and at this point the pedestrian, who is now in the centre of the crossing, reacts by trying to move off the crossing, but it was too late. Sadly, at 12:10 pm, despite best efforts from emergency services and a doctor on board the tram, bus driver Carlos Correa was fatally injured. The tram was travelling at 33 miles per hour at the point of collision. The RAIB arrived later in the day to investigate the incident. They quickly wanted to see if the driver's actions had anything to do with the serious incident. On the Edinburgh tram system, there is a policy called line of sight. This requires tram drivers to use their service brake similar to a car and are not required to stop or slow down at crossings unless an obstruction is seen. An investigation found that the driver followed his training and used his brakes correctly, therefore was not at fault for the collision. Obviously, the main cause of the accident was the pedestrian walking out, seemingly unaware of the tram. Therefore, the RAIB wanted to find out why. They walked the crossing the exact same direction as the pedestrian had, and quickly realised that the line of sight of the track was not as clear as initially anticipated. Here are photos taken from 14, 8 and 6 metres from the crossing. You can see that the view is nearly completely obstructed by large bushes and trees, which not only obstruct the view of the track for the pedestrian, but also hinder the sight for tram drivers as well. Despite this, the RAIB did question why he did not look up after clearing the trees to try and see any trams approaching. The CCTV footage also suggests that he was possibly distracted just before the crossing by looking in his bag for either his phone or car keys, which were found on the floor at the scene. Even though this may be the case, the RAIB, when looking at the crossing's design, felt that a much better layout would have forced the pedestrian to have looked up for trams. According to the RSP2 guideline for trams, pedestrian fences or chicanes, such as those used in this image, should be present at all crossings to guide people to face oncoming trams and make them aware that they are entering an area of increased danger. Shockingly, the RAIB found that Edinburgh trams had not carried out a full risk assessment of the crossing and had no process to constantly review potential changes. The last puzzle of the investigation was why didn't the pedestrian hear the constant warning sounds from the tram? There are two sound warning systems on trams, which are the low noise of a bell and a louder horn. The quieter bell is usually used to alert people of the presence of trams, especially on streets, and the louder horn is used in emergencies or in off-street areas. A sound specialist was placed with microphones on the level crossing, with a tram at various positions. Research indicates that sound would need to be approximately 15 decibels above background noise for you to be able to hear it reliably. This graph shows the results of the microphone tests at different distances from the crossing. It correlates with the reaction of the pedestrian, who appeared to move and recognise the tram at roughly 20 metres before impact, only when the driver started to use the horn. Overall, this means that all of the warning sounds on the trams were not effective unless they were closer than 20 metres from the crossing due to the background noise. The RAIB concluded that a thorough risk assessment would have picked this up, requiring additional safety features on the crossing, such as warning lights, barriers or chicanes. The RAIB made several recommendations in conclusion of the report, such as requiring a full risk assessment of the crossing, removing all vegetation in the walkway prior, and also improving warning systems for pedestrians. 5 years after the accident, Edinburgh trams were found guilty for not carrying out a suitable and sufficient risk assessment of the layout of the crossing, which could have provided sufficient notice to pedestrians of oncoming trams. They were fined in court a total of £240,000. Thanks for watching this astonishing incident, and please subscribe for more weekly videos. Thank you.